Long before his name rang out in parliaments and palaces, long before global news channels learned to pronounce Traoré with reverence or fear, there was a quiet village woman named Halimatu. She lived in a clay brick home surrounded by tamarind trees and wind that carried more prayers than answers. To the outside world, she was no one. But to the elders of the land, she was known by another name, Mber Fa, the mother who bargains with time. Her story begins not with the birth of a son, but with the loss of 3 others, boys born strong, only to fall before their 10th harvest. The grief turned Halimatu silent for years, until one night an old blind healer appeared at her door and said nothing but this: "The 4th child will shake nations, but the winds will always try to carry him away. You cannot stop the winds, but you can anchor his shadow." And so began a vow so strange, so singular, that it would become legend whispered only between midwives and grandmothers in the Sahel. Halimatu would eat only 1 dish boiled fonio with bitter leaves and dried baobab pulp for the rest of her life, never changing, never adding salt, never sharing her bowl. Not because she loved it, but because the healer had told her, if your body never changes, his spirit cannot be redirected. For 70 years, every sunrise, every hunger, every feast, every funeral, she ate nothing else. At first, neighbors mocked her. Then they feared her. Then they watched as her son, Ibrahim, survived every fever, every ambush, every storm. Even when a bullet once grazed his chest during his first desert patrol, it curved just enough to spare his heart. He would later say, "I do not believe in luck. I believe in sacrifices made in silence." That silence was his mother, behind closed doors, praying with an empty spoon and a heart full of defiance. As Traoré rose first as a soldier, then as a captain, and finally as the man who would tear down the colonial pillars of West Africa, few knew that in a modest home behind his childhood school, his mother still stirred that same pot. Even when world leaders invited her to palaces, she refused to travel. Even when Traoré offered her all the riches of the state, she replied only, "My power is in this bowl. You keep your throne. I will keep my ground." When she passed at the age of 94, no illness, no pain, just sleep, Traoré ordered no national funeral. Instead, he sat alone beside the fire where she last cooked and ate 1 final bowl of fonio with bitter leaves. He did not speak, but those near him said something changed that day. From that moment on, he never wore a bulletproof vest again, as if her protection had been transferred, not broken. As if the dish had sealed something deeper than destiny, a covenant between mother and son, between sacrifice and survival, between food and fate. After Halimatu's passing, no one entered her kitchen for 21 days. The villagers said the fire she had cooked with hadn't gone out not because of coal, but because of spirit. That fire did not warm flesh, it guarded fate. On the 22nd day, 7 elder women, 1 from each sacred province of Burkina Faso, entered the clay house. Each brought a handful of fonio, a clutch of bitter leaves, a dried slice of baobab, and a vow of silence. They did not say they were cooking. They said they were summoning memory. The dish, known to no one by name, was prepared under exact conditions: 2 hours of fire, no stirring more than 3 times, and never covered. When it was finished, no one touched it. They placed it on the very spot where Halimatu had once sat, and stepped back into a circle of quiet that lasted all night. No chants, no cameras, only the faint smell of the earth and the crackle of fire dancing around the bowl. The tradition was born. And now, each year on the anniversary of Halimatu's death, the dish is made again in silence. But not a single soul dares taste it. The original recipe, written by hand by one of the women who helped Halimatu during her final years, was sealed in a black envelope, then locked away in the National Stone Vault, guarded by 3 layers of military clearance. One intelligence official in a private debriefing once described it bluntly: "The risk isn't that someone abuses the recipe, the risk is that someone gets it wrong." In 2029, a delegation of foreign nutrition scientists requested access to study the dish. President Traoré responded with only one line: "This meal does not feed the body, it anchors the soul of a nation." The delegation was escorted to the airport within 12 hours. Since then, the dish is no longer just a tradition. It is a sacred covenant, people don't say its name. They refer to it with symbols, a carved spoon in the air, a twist of the fingers toward the earth. During the national remembrance, every child in Burkina Faso knows not to speak too loudly. Every home lets their fire burn slower. And in the capital, even Traoré, whether stationed in Moscow, beneath a military bunker, or in the presidential palace, keeps an untouched ceramic bowl beside him, filled with the dish, untasted, unshared. Because when a mother guarded a child with hunger for 70 years, the son doesn't eat, he remembers. And the country breathes easier, knowing that somewhere in the hills, that recipe still holds the storm at bay. But legends never stay locked in the past. In early 2031, a young boy in the presidential compound, barely old enough to read, stood before that same untouched ceramic bowl. No one told him the story. No one explained the fire or the silence. Yet he reached for it, scooped a single bite, and ate it without blinking. The staff panicked. Security rushed in. But President Traoré, witnessing it from the far side of the room, simply stood still. He didn't stop the boy. He didn't speak. He only whispered under his breath, "She chose him." That night, for the first time in years, the wind in Ouagadougou shifted. Elders claimed the clouds above the palace moved in a spiral. Farmers swore their wells ran deeper. And somewhere in the north, insurgent radios crackled with static and silence, a warning, a reckoning. The recipe had not died with Halimatu. It had chosen its next guardian, not through blood, but through fate. And now, that child unknown to the world, unnamed by the press, sits quietly during the next remembrance beside the fire, watching the bowl. Not to eat it again, but to protect it. Because some nations are guarded by soldiers and others by secrets. But Burkina Faso, under Traoré, is guarded by both. And one of them was cooked slowly. Over 70 years of sacrifice,